Okay, let's unpack.
Today we are doing a really fascinating and pretty complicated deep dive.
It feels like it.
Yeah, we're looking at just one source of transcript from let's say, a very specific, highly ideological YouTube commentary video.
Right. So this isn't straight news reporting we're talking about.
Not at all. It's more like a piece of political performance. It uses this one moment of celebrity controversy to build this huge top-to-bottom critique of mainstream media, of Hollywood.
That's right. And our mission today is to really, rapidly and thoroughly get to the core of the arguments and the factual claims that are being presented by this content creator.
The creator is John Del Arroz, who's a sci-fi writer and commentator.
And the path he lays out, it's a wild one. We start with a really highly charged shooting incident involving law enforcement.
Right.
Then it moves through, of all things, a 4-word celebrity Instagram post.
Just forward.
And it all ends up with these sweeping accusations of cultural subversion inside one of the biggest shows on the planet, Netflix's Stranger Things.
It's crucial for you listening to be fully informed about the specific claims here, because they're pretty extreme and they're all interconnected. And what's really important for us to dissect is the mechanism he's used, how a single, really brief statement from an actor.
Joe Keery, who plays Steve Harrington.
Exactly. How that one statement can be, well, weaponized, really, and integrated into this sprawling narrative about systemic cultural control, political alignment, basically ideological warfare in the entertainment.
What's so fascinating here is that the celebrity response isn't even the main event in his argument.
No, it's just evidence.
It's confirmatory evidence. It's like watching a single match light what the commentator immediately sells as this massive forest fire of ideological commentary. We're really analyzing the structure of the critique itself.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this source views the celebrity political comment not as some personal opinion he just dashed off.
Right.
No, it's seen as part of a coordinated ideological effort. The commentator sees this as proof that the entire creative and corporate ecosystem, we're talking Netflix, the Duffer Brothers, the entire cast, is pushing a hostile, revolutionary agenda.
So we need to be really meticulous here. We need to relay the specific points of that connection, just as the commentator articulates them.
And we have to make sure we're clearly separating their claims from our neutral analysis. That's key.
Absolutely. So I guess we have to start the origin. The inciting event that triggered this whole chain reaction of political and cultural condemnation.
That's the only place to start.
Okay, so the entire discussion really hinges on this one fatal. It involved an ICE officer in Minneapolis, Minnesota. According to the source material we're looking at, the shooting involved an ICE officer who shot and killed a woman named Renee Nicole Good.
And to really understand the commentator's intense reaction, we have to detail the specific, very highly charged framing that they applied to this event right from the start.
It seems like the context is everything here.
It is. The source provides a very particular context. It frames the event from the outset not as, say, a tragic confrontation gone wrong.
No.
It's framed as an intentional act of aggression by the women involved against law enforcement.
So the central claim, then, is what?
The central claim made by the commentator is that Renee Nicole Good was shot only after she allegedly attempted to run the ICE officer over with her vehicle.
Okay. So for the source, that context, that imminent threat to the officer's life, is the crucial part.
It's everything. It's what justifies the officer's use of lethal force in their view.
And the source adds these, highly charged layers of detail about the women involved and their alleged motivation. It's like they're prejudging their actions before we even get the story.
Yes. The commentator characterized the women involved, Renee Nicole Good and another individual, as professional agitators.
Professional agitators. That's a very specific label.
Very specific. They were described as lesbian women who went and blocked traffic in the middle of the road. The narrative from the source paints them as deliberately provocative.
So not just people who got caught up in a bad...
No, the claim is that they refused to exit the vehicle and were, quote, screeching while filming the interact. The implication is crystal clear. They weren't accidental participants in a confrontation, but were intentionally seeking to create a crisis.
And the source even implies a motivation for that crisis, right?
It does. The source implies the women were actively trying to create an incident for their TikToks and trying to get famous for themselves.
Wow. So that places the focus squarely on the women's perceived motivation, not just the act of the officer threat.
Exactly. This is where the source really begins its ideological work.
That framing is just, it's essential to the whole argument that follows because it transforms the incident from a law enforcement action into a political skirmish that was engineered for social media.
Right. And furthermore, the source explicitly aggresses and refutes what they call lies that were circulating elsewhere about the mechanics of the shooting itself.
What was that specific technical plot that the source...
The commentator claimed that the car was aiming directly at the officer. They refuted other reports that were circulating, reports that claimed the shots went through the passenger window. The source says this was not true.
So the claim is the vehicle was aimed right
to the agent. This specific detail reinforces their core claim of self-defense, that the officer fired directly into a threat that was actively targeting them.
And that detail is pivotal, isn't it? It anchors the commentator's entire defense of the officer's actions.
It sets a definitive, non-negotiable stage for all the political reactions that followed.
Which sets a very definite, intensely partisan stage for the official political reaction, specifically President Trump's statement on Truth Social.
Yeah, the context is already set. The incident is framed as an intentional, videotaped act of aggression against a government.
So let's get into Trump's reaction. As it's quoted in the source, it serves as this powerful political endorsement of the officer's act.
It does. And crucially, it generalizes the incident into a wider political conflict. His core claim begins with a statement that he just viewed the clip of the event, and he described the scene as a horrible thing to watch.
But he doesn't stop there. He immediately starts characterizing the individuals involved, and it sounds like he's mirroring and reinforcing the commentator's framing that we just discussed.
Oh, absolutely. He doesn't treat them as ordinary citizens in a confrontation.
No.
He characterized the woman screaming as, and this is a quote, obviously a professional agitator.
Obviously. There's that word.
Right. And for the driver, he stated she was very disorderly obstructing, resisting, and then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer.
That framing, again, it supports the narrative that the actions taken by the officer were against these highly aggressive, politically motivated individuals who intended harm.
The detail about intent is key because, like you said, it moves the discussion away from something like police procedure and into this realm of political self-defense against agitators.
And then he directly addresses the justification.
He did. He offered a defense that really relied on that narrative of extreme danger. Trump stated the officer seems to have shot her in self-defense.
Seems?
Right. And he added a detail, noting the severity of the confrontation for the officer. He mentioned that the officer was recovering in the hospital, and he concluded it was hard to believe he is alive.
And that line serves as not just a justification for the shooting, but also as a validation of extreme danger. It suggests the officer was a victim of an attempted murder.
We have to pause on that detail. The source utilizes Trump's claim that the officer was so seriously injured, hard to believe he's alive, to just solidify the gravity of the threat faced.
It makes the shooting appear less like an unfortunate excessive force case
and more like a necessary action to prevent a murder.
That's the strategic use of the information.
And this is where Trump transitions. He goes from this specific incident to the broader political implications. He starts connecting the dots between this one event and a larger ideological conflict that he claims is targeting law enforcement nationwide.
This is the critical pivot point, isn't it, where the specific event is generalized into a national ideological threat.
That's exactly right. Trump connected the incident to a wider trend, stating, and I'm quoting directly from the source here, the reason these incidents are happening is because the radical left is threatening, assaulting, and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis.
So this one single incident, which has already been framed in the most aggressive terms possible, is now presented as undeniable proof of a sustained, malicious political campaign against authority.
Precise. And he concluded by asserting that law enforcement needs protection from this radical left movement of violence and hate.
The entire statement just provides this detailed political justification for the officer's act.
And it generalizes the whole thing into a narrative of ideological warfare against American institutions. It sets the battle lines so clearly. And this is all before the celebrity even steps onto the stage.
Okay, so now we switch gears entirely. We're moving from a detailed, politically contextualized statement from a former president to the celebrity response that became the next flashpoint.
Joe Keery,
the actor famous for playing Steve Harrington.
And the contrast is just staggering. That contrast is what fuels the entire rest of the source's critique.
How so?
Joe Keery reacted to the situation with just extreme brevity. It's this emotional, immediate counterpoint to the very calculated political justification offered by President Trump.
And that brevity, just those 4 words, is what the commentator immediately pounces on.
Pounce is the right word.
So what was the exact statement? It was delivered on Instagram.
Yep, on Instagram. It was incredibly concise and completely unambiguous in its condemnation of the former president. Keery denounced President Trump with zero human decency. Stop this man.
And here's where the structure of the source's critique is so apparent.
It really does.
You have this extensive paragraph-long statement from President Trump justifying the shooting within a larger political framework.
Mhm.
And it's immediately contrasted with this extremely swift and emotionally charged denouncement from a high-profile actor. The economy of Keery's language leaves the meaning open to wide.
And the commentator immediately fills that void with the most inflammatory interpretation possible.
That's the precise setup for the rest of the source's argument, isn't it?
It is. The commentator takes that short, sharp denouncement and uses it as proof of deep, systemic political bias and, ultimately, as a call for extreme action.
It transforms the statement.
Completely. From an expression of dismay into evidence of an ideological conspiracy.
Yeah.
This is the exact moment a cultural critic takes a celebrity's opinion and weaponizes it as proof of a hostile agenda.
So now we're moving fully into the mind of the We're shifting from the factual claims of the incident and the reaction
To the highly specific, critical analysis of Joe Keery's.
Right. The creator questions the actor's motives and then just extrapolates them to implicate the entire.
And the core of this section is analyzing how the source interprets those three words. Stop this man. It is taken so far beyond a simple political disagreement or a call for impeachment or even, just electoral deceit.
Where do they take it?
The source immediately frames it as a call for violence.
So the creator questions the practical meaning of stop this. How do they do that?
Well, they note their view that Trump has won what they consider 3 presidential elections in a row, which is a reference to the 2016 victory and the 2 subsequent elections where the commentator failed to deliver his rightful victory.
So by framing it that way, they're suggesting that normal electorals are not what the actor is at.
This rhetorical move is absolutely crucial. By dismissing the electoral interpretation, the source sets the stage for the most explosive claim in the entire commentary.
The allegation of incite.
The allegation of incite. The creator explicitly claimed that the actor's statement was calling for violence, specifically including the death of Donald Trump. The source labels the statement as incitement to violence again.
Hold on, again? That is an extraordinary accusation. I mean, that's a monumental, and it feels like a baseless leap from a brief Instagram. Does the source offer any evidence for this interpretation, or is this just purely interpretive projection based on previous political?
It's interpretive projection, but the commentator attempts to substantiate it. They do this by referencing these alleged prior incidents involving the former president, presenting them as a pattern that, in their view, proves the actor's alleged intent.
Okay, walk us through those claims. And just to be clear, these are claims made by the commentator within the source material we're analyzing.
Absolutely. The source provided extremely dramatic and unsubstantiated claims. They referenced 2 alleged prior incidents where Trump was supposedly shot at twice.
Shot at twice.
Yes. And the commentator claimed, with stunning detail, that one of these incidents actually blew part of his ear off.
What? That degree of dramatic detail, the claim that he lost part of his ear, that's injected precisely to emphasize the perceived severity and frequency of these threats, right? To confirm a pattern of malice.
Exactly. The commentator uses these alleged, very dramatic prior attacks to just cement their conclusion that these actors do want Donald Trump dead. They want that to happen.
So this interpretation transforms the actor's forward Instagram post into a direct political threat.
A call for assassination. Yeah. And they argue that Keery is simply joining a chorus of murderous intent that originates from Hollywood.
And the threat isn't just focused on Trump himself, right? The source expands the accusation to target the actor's fan base, which is largely young people engaged with Stranger Things.
Absolutely. The source alleged that actors like Keery use their platforms not just to express their personal views, but to call for their fan base to go crazed and try to run over people with cars and go insane.
That is the ultimate connect. It directly connects the actor's brief political statement about Trump to the initial incident involving the ICE officer and Renee Nicole Good.
It implies that the actor is actively encouraging his viewer to mimic the type of violent behavior that occurred in Minnesota.
It links the celebrity political platform directly to real-world violence.
And asserting that this is exactly what they do with their platforms. The source insists that the actors have this vision of this communist revolution coming undo America, and that's the driving force behind their public statements.
So the Instagram post is seen not as a spontaneous reaction,
but as a deliberate signal to ideological allies to go out and commit violence.
Now, this moves the focus from Joe Keery's personal politics and alleged incitement to what the source views as a coordinated industry-wide agenda.
The transition from actor to...
Right. And the creator actually uses the character of Steve Harrington, ironic trend.
They do. It's a way of separating the character the audience loves from the person the commentator despises.
How does that work?
The source ironically referred to the character Steve Harrington as Steve the bass, sort of jock kid who became this beloved figure. But immediately reminded the listener that actors are not who he is in reality.
So that separation is a crucial tool for the commentator. It separates the appealing escapist fiction from the alleged hostile political reality of the person's role.
The character is a lure. The actor is the ideological.
And this hostility is then applied universally across the entire production, the corporate entity, not just Keery.
That's the big sweeping claim. The source claimed that every single Stranger Things actor, the Duffer Brothers, the creators, and Netflix as an entity, want a violent communist revolution in our country to just absolutely obliterate and destroy.
That is a broad, extreme political allegiance they're assigning to the entire creative and corporate ecosystem response to the show.
It's a huge claim.
And it's interesting that they use the term communist revolution. That's a very specific historical political term. In the source's context, how do they define this revolution?
Well, for this commentator, communist revolution appears to be shorthand for the complete dismantling of traditional American culture, institutions like ICE and social norms.
And the vehicle?
The aggressive promotion of identity politics and anti-establishment ideology. It's an overarching term for cultural destruction driven by the political left.
And the source points out a certain irony here regarding the capital system that funds this alleged revolution.
The creator points out the immense irony that the highly profitable capitalist streaming system, Netflix, allows these actors and creators to exist, to profit handsomely, and yet they allegedly push this anti-capitalist revolutionary agenda.
But the source doesn't think their funding would pay.
No, they quickly dismiss that possibility, calling their productions propaganda piece, that the system itself needs to keep circulating to maintain its ideological influence.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, this source views the celebrity political comment not as a random outburst, but as part of a coordinated, sustained campaign of cultural warfare,
aimed at destroying the current system from within.
The source is essentially saying they hate you, they hate the country, and they are using their massive platform to promote violence.
That is the summary of the source's narrative of Hollywood motivation. For the commentator, Joe Keery's Instagram post is just one small, expected manifestation of this much larger revolutionary goal shared by the entire Netflix production.
So it's evident.
It is evidence, they claim, of the industry's deep-seated hatred for a certain segment of the viewing audience, the traditional genre fan who just wants escapism.
So having established the alleged political intent of the cast, that they want a communist revolution, the source then pivots to analyzing the show itself.
Right. They start claiming that the production and casting of Stranger Things actively push this political and social agenda, which the creator explicitly calls identity politics.
This segment is where the commentary becomes a true cultural critic.
It is. It's dedicated to providing evidence that the political ideology isn't just held by the actors in private, but is fundamentally baked into the DNA of the show.
So from its funding and corporate ties
down to specific character arcs and casting choice, the claim is that the content itself is being deliberately corrupted.
The source begins with a really strong, ideologically charged label for this. It's called a Netflix Obama production.
This label immediately links the streaming service and the show to a specific political establishment that the commentator opposes.
And what's the implication of that?
The commentator claims that the producers are shilling this stuff, pushing identity politics further than ever before. The implication is that this political alignment isn't just incidental. It's intentional, and it's financially supported by specific political force.
Which brings us back to that funding claim and the alleged political purpose of the show.
The source explicitly links the show to what they call Obama with hard investment, stating this is perpetuating a world order that the creator dislikes.
So they see the show not as entertainment,
but as a vehicle for ideological transmission, funded by forces aligned with the previous Democratic administration, serving a globalist agenda.
So what, then, is the overall assessment of the show's functional purpose in this culture?
The source deems Stranger Things a complete disaster on the political level.
Wow.
Its core purpose, according to the creator, is to try to run the scup on what they describe as fantasy, science fiction, horror-loving viewer.
Run the scope. We have to spend a moment clarifying what the source means by that. It's a bit opaque.
It is. In the context of the source, running the SOP means drawing in a traditional audience, one they assume is politically traditional or conservative, or at least not interested in explicit political messaging.
With nostalgia, high-quality production, genre tropes, all the things that make the show popular.
Exactly. And once that audience is hooked, the source alleges the producers inject the politically charged content, the identity politic, which subverts the audience's values while they're distracted by the spectacle.
It's the idea that these viewers who just want escapist entertainment are being politically ambushed through their preferred genres.
Being fed ideology under the guise of 80s nostalgia.
That's the trap.
That's the trap. The belief is that the show's success masks its true politically toxic nature, allowing the producers to slowly poison the well of genre entertainment. And to prove this, the source moves on to specific cast and narrative examples.
To solidify this argument that Stranger Things is ideologically compromised, the source offers 3 specific, highly publicized examples.
Right, involving cast members and character developments, linking them directly to this alleged pervasive political agenda. This is where the cultural critique gets extremely personal and specific.
So let's start with the first example. It involves Maya Hawke, who plays Robin.
And is also the daughter of Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke, which the source makes a point of mentioning. The source uses a highly sensitive personal comment made by the actress to brand the entire production.
What exactly was the incident cited by the commentator?
This example focuses on a controversial public statement she made during a late-night show appearance. The source cited a claim that Hawke said she was glad that her mom aborted her sister, and further alleged that Hawke claimed this decision actually made her life better.
We have to understand the sheer weight the source puts on this claim. The commentator is using this highly sensitive and personal viewpoint on a divisive political issue as direct evidence of the general moral disposition higher cast.
That's the strategy. The source's conclusion from citing this comment is that the cast is unhinged and absolutely crazy.
So the controversial viewpoint isn't just a personal opinion.
For the commentator, it serves as confirmation that these are not ordinary actors, but individuals actively promoting views that the commentator deems extreme, destructive, and politically radical. It's used to establish the out-of-touch nature of the talent.
Okay, the second example shifts focus directly to character development within the show, specifically involving Noah Schnapp, who plays Will Byers, and his coming out.
This is a prime example of how the source interprets a personal development as a political imposition on the narrative.
So what happened?
Schnapp had a personal revelation. He stated that Stranger Things actually got him into the LGBTQ lifestyle, and he expressed happiness that he came out of the closet, and that everyone supported him, just like in the show.
So the source sees the show as an accelerator or a facilitator of this lifestyle, but the deeper, more serious critique is leveled at the creative influence the actor allegedly wielded.
Correct. The source goes further, making a direct and unverified claim that Schnapp then forced that and bugged the writers into forcing that into the show to turn this little kid Will gay.
That is a very specific claim of editorial corruption.
It is.
That the story wasn't dictated by the writers or the natural narrative flow, but by an actor demanding the writers conform the story to his personal journey and political agenda.
It connects the actor's statement that he was supported, just like in the show, to the claim that he actively ensured the show's narrative aligned with his personal journey. This, for the commentator, serves the broader agenda of pushing identity politics.
And it's presented as conclusive proof that the show is sacrificing storytelling integrity for political conformity.
Exactly. That the writers are weak and the actors are activist manipulators.
Okay, the third and final example brings us back to Joe Keery's character, Steve Harrington. The source asserts that Steve's entire character arc is not just creative writing,
but a deliberate act of political subversion and humiliation.
This is perhaps the most narrative-focused piece of evidence they've.
It is. The source argues that the writing team deliberately undermined the character played by Joe Keery because of what Steve initially represented. The popular, successful, traditionally masculine-based jock kid. The character's decline is interpreted as an ideological message.
And the source uses highly charged internet slang to describe this character decline. We should probably clarify the term cucked.
Yeah, that term. It originated as highly charged political and internet slang. It's used here by the commentator to describe narrative defeat and humiliation, especially the defeat of a traditional male figure by a less traditionally masculine rival.
So the source is claiming Steve's arc is an ideological tool to undermine traditional masculinity.
That's the argument.
What were the specific narrative instances they cited to prove this deliberate political character assessment?
The commentator detailed 2 specific instances that they believe signaled. The first was that Steve gets cucked by Jonathan.
Referring to the relationship dynamics where Nancy chooses Jonathan over.
Right. The source called this a sad at first moment, characterizing it as the traditional attractive jock losing the girl to the nerdy, less polished rival, which the commentator interprets as an ideological statement against traditional male archetypes.
And the second example is even more explicit in the context of the identity politics agenda the source alleges.
Yes. The source noted that the next girl Steve is interested in, Robin, turns into a lesbian. The commentator uses the word oof, suggesting this isn't just a random plot,
but a painful, deliberate narrative.
A choice to ensure Steve's romantic life is repeatedly thwarted by progressive ideological elements, specifically lesbianism. The message, according to the source, is clear. The traditional male hero must be defeated and humiliated at every turn.
This analysis of Steve's romantic failures as ideological warfare is really central to the critique. It turns the character arc into a political statement meant to punish the audience for liking a tradition.
And a final political twist on this subversion is directed back at the actor himself, Joe Keery, tying the character's fate to the actor's politics.
What is that final twist?
That's the punchline for the creator, closing the loop back to part one. The source concluded that the actor probably liked it and was into these character developments because of his political support.
So they're tying the actor's personal politics, his denouncement of Trump, to his character's unfortunate narrative.
The implication is that because Keery supports the radical left movement he deserved, and possibly even encouraged, the narrative subversion and humiliation of his own character, Steve Herring.
Wow. So the entire critique, this sweeping, detailed argument against Netflix and Hollywood, it culminates not just in outrage, but in a call to act.
Through an alternative media solution, the content creator's own work, the video seamlessly transitions from extreme cultural criticism to a direct marketing pitch.
A solution pitch.
Exactly, where the content creator offers an alternative to the perceived toxic culture of mainstream sci-fi and fantasy. They start by establishing their own credentials as a victim of the system they are criticizing, reinforcing the us versus them battle lines.
That's the claim of personal blacklisting, right? It lends credibility to their counter-narrative.
Right. The creator mentioned being blacklisted from mainstream publishing due to the content they produce on the YouTube channel, stating they were just persisting in making a career out of this anyway despite them.
So it reinforces the message that the commentator is a principled rebel who is exiled by the very forces, the radical left, in publishing, that now controls Stranger Things.
And so the critique of Stranger Things is framed as part of this larger, necessary cultural battle. If you don't like the politics of Netflix, here's the escape route.
The escape route is his own work.
Precisely. The creator pitches his own sci-fi and fantasy book, specifically mentioning a sci-fi book, a fantasy book, and a full superhero graphic novel as a necessary part of changing the culture to the next level.
And this material is presented as ideologically pure entertainment, free from the identity politics the audience just heard detailed.
They are offered as a direct ideological counterpoint to the material they just criticized, almost a replacement for the corrupted entertainment.
And how do people get it?
They're offered for free in exchange for an email sign. This ensures they can stay in touch with their audience, and he cites concerns about, YouTube algorithms going away.
And the ultimate goal is pretty ambitious.
Very. It's to have an entity that aligns with their values, specifically maybe an Angel Studios or something, pick up his work. This is the final step in their suggested cultural counter-revolution, the creation of an alternative, ideologically aligned production system.
So the entire video, therefore, functions as both an intense, highly partisan cultural critique and a direct marketing.
Aimed at an audience disillusioned with the politics they see injected into their favorite genre. It's a complete business model built on ideological content.
It's a highly effective narrative loop for their target audience.
It is. You identify the problem, liberal propaganda, confirm the problem using celebrity statements and narrative examples, and then offer this solution, ideologically pure alternative content, to fight the culture war.
And the success of this model relies entirely on the audience adopting the commentators.
That the intent behind every casting choice, every character arc, and every celebrity social media post is political, systemic, and hostile.
It's an assertion that the cultural war is real and being waged by Hollywood using fantasy and sci-fi as their battle.
That's the entire premise.
So we've completed our deep dive into this really unique source. We analyzed how one content creator used a celebrity's brief forward reaction to a controversial shooting in the Minnesota ICE shooting to construct this comprehensive, multi-layered argument.
An argument about political bias and ideological control within a major TV franchise like Stranger Things and, by extension, all of Netflix.
The source methodically wove together these complex claims, detailed news commentary, justifying force, allegations of assassination plots against a former president,
specific narrative analysis pointing to character humiliation, or cucking, and claims about actors forcing writers to incorporate personal identity issues into the show.
And all of this was used to assert a belief that the entertainment industry, from the funding at the top down to the script decisions, is actively hostile to a conservative audience and demanding a violent communist revolution.
So what does this all mean for you, the person consuming this meat? The deep dive highlights the fundamental shift in how political communication functions today.
It's incredible. Highly charged political events are immediately channeled into commentary to support these broader cultural and ideological narratives about who controls main.
An Instagram post of 4 words is immediately interpreted via projection and extreme historical claims as proof of a systemic plot for cultural and political destruction.
It really demonstrates the current state of cultural media, where content is often immediately filtered through a political.
Seeking out signals of ideological alignment or hostility. This specific source illustrates an extreme but increasingly common framework where every creative choice, from a character's sexual orientation to a jock losing a girl, is interpreted as evidence of an orchestrated identity politics attack on the conservative viewer.
So for this commentator, there is no artistic voice.
Only political motive.
We started with an event involving an ICE agent and Renee Nicole Good, transitioned through a 2-sentence celebrity denouncement that was linked to claims of attempted presidential assassination, analyzed character arcs as political punishment,
And ended with a pitch for anti-establishment sci-fi book. It's an incredible, high-velocity journey of political extrapolation, fueled entirely by the desire to find meaning and intent in every single piece of cultural output.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought.
The source material posits that the relationship between Hollywood and its audience is fundamentally broken due to irreconcilable ideological conflict. If this framework, where every narrative choice or actor statement is viewed through a lens of us versus them and interpreted as a sign of ideological warfare, if that's widely adopted,
Does that level of constant political vigilance ultimately undermine the capacity for genuine escapist pleasure? Or is political commentary now simply an inseparable and an unavoidable part of modern pop?
and maybe more pointedly, if you view every story as propaganda, can you truly enjoy any story at all? That's what we leave you to mull over.